And welcome to this week's edition of Blacklisted Radio. Thank you for tuning in. It's the 22nd day of March 2015. Are you caught up in March Madness? Your president is. It's pretty funny, the things that are important to the American people, or at least some of them. And March Madness is one of them. It's where you get to gorge yourself, for you outside of the country and those that just don't care. It's where you get to gorge yourself on college basketball, NCAA hoops. It's a big deal here in Gitmo Nation, and we enjoy that. To see the amount of concern that people have about Barack Obama's bracket and how far off he is. Of course, people get excited about something that's pretty hard to win. You can make a lot of money in basketball, I'm sure. I don't bet on any sports because I think that, it's, even if you're the most informed, you won't probably end up beating the numbers. You can always rest assured that at some point they always come back to get you. So even if you have all the inside tips and you really just ingratiate yourself into that kind of culture and just follow it night and day, you can still, not do too well in the betting pool. But anyway, people on Twitter are just astonished that Barack Obama's that bad. It's so off. And I think it's kind of metaphorical for a lot of the things that people are off base about in this country and more worried about, and then the things that are kind of pressing. So we'll talk about some of those, just some of the annoyances when you look at the media. Everybody's excited about Ted Cruz. He will be announcing his bid to be president of the theocracy known as the United States of America. I don't know what the world would look like, but it would be pretty funny. I think we would have a lot of material for the show. There's no doubt about that. I mean, that's really what it comes down to in partisan politics. It's really, for me, who's going to be the most entertaining, who's going to be the most cunning, who is going to be basically shielded from all scrutiny by one team or the other. That's what it comes down to. And that's really all there is for me when it comes to the presidential election and the whole run-up and the media circus that absolutely benefits primarily the media when it comes to the amount of money that politicians have to shill out to get their message to the American voters. It's really a big scam, and if anybody benefits from it, it's really the media. And so you're going to see a lot of focus on that, obviously. There's always going to be a close race, because if it's not close, then it's not worth watching. It's not interesting, and it's boring. And it's only in everybody's interest that it's as close as possible. So those things are happening right now. One of the things that's not getting a lot of attention is the new Chinese investment bank. If you haven't seen this, Christine Lagarde she's head of the IMF, by the way, the International Monetary Fund, which is a huge international development bank that loans money to countries and puts them into debt serfdom, and institutes plans like austerity that are pretty much disavowed and have really done nothing. I can't think of too many things that are good. I'm trying to think. No. If you look at the situation in Europe, you're not going to find a lot of great examples of economic prosperity that have arrived from the IMF. And that's because they bet politically. They bet on bad bets. They give money to bad people that don't have to pay the money back. So when it comes to the IMF, I mean, you can only blame them so much for what it is that they do. But primarily it's U.S. taxpayer money, at least 1/5 of it, that goes to things like the Ukrainian government buying weapons, the Ukrainian government paying off their debt to Gazprom, or There's a variety of things that are big-time losers that the IMF is forced to invest in. So one of the things that they're looking at is working with the new Chinese bank. Now, the United States hegemony of the U.S. dollar, the dollar might, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the dollar is going to crash next week because I don't honestly believe that, but the gold bugs and dollar doomers, and I'm one of them. I just think that, as long as Hillary Clinton has millions of them, that they're going to maintain some value. And by all estimates, compared to all other fiat metrics and other manipulated monetary values, they're not doing that bad. Considering when the world blows up, if you have gold in your hand and you want to trade it back, it probably will be a great investment. And up to that point, I don't know. I mean, there's quite a row over gold fixing by Morgan Stanley and or J.P. Morgan rather, and so we'll see where that all plays out. But in the managed world, where it's about power, it's about control, and it's about guns, the U.S. has reigned supreme, and our dollar has continued to invade. It has touched so many places in the world, and it is highly desired at the moment, just at the moment. So before you guys get your pitchforks out, it's not that I'm a dollar fan, anti-gold, or any other. I'm not really on the bandwagon for any certain investment in whatever it is that people try to shield themselves from. It might be just better to invest in yourself, and I don't know. But my point is that the dollar has value because it's widely used, widely accepted. And I think that we can all agree that when something is sought after, when something is regarded as good as gold, then it is. And that's the way the U.S. dollar is currently today. A lot of people in countries around the world, places like Ukraine that we're going to talk about, rather have U.S. dollars than whatever kind of Ukrainian buck that they're going to get. And if they're getting a euro, actually they're starting to lose value in purchasing power in that regard as well. The question is, where are you going to be spending your euro? Are you going to be buying U.S. products? Probably not. So even though the exchange rate in the U.S. taking on this new role as one of the most powerful currency in the Anglo-Western banking system, that is coming to a crescendo of some proportion at some point. What goes up must come down at some point, and things are not looking good for the Eurozone either. So we have a fragmentation in NATO. Now, NATO staging war games right there on the Russian border. They are doing everything that they can, I think, to provocateur Russia into moving military equipment so they can get a photo opportunity into maybe eastern Ukraine. It's a sign of power, or at least the U.S. believes it is, to parade around trucks and armored vehicles and tanks in these former Russian countries along the Eastern Bloc. I think it's really a testament to how bankrupt our foreign policy has become, and the impotence of the might of the U.S. Because at some point, the only thing that we have left to offer is military weaponry. If anybody's benefiting from ISIS, ironically, it is the U.S. military-industrial complex, just to name one group. But nonetheless, we are seeing this divide where countries like Greece, countries like Tunisia, France, Italy, maybe even Germany, are starting to question the policies of the IMF. They are starting to question the U.S. primarily, and some of the other bad actors and friends of the empire, namely Israel, who is it has an interesting new old president with new powers and a new mission. We'll talk about Netanyahu, I guess. We can talk about him, but nonetheless, these buddies of the United States, our good friends and allies, are getting a lot of scrutiny in Europe, and Europeans are, alongside the U.S., looking at sanctions, something that used to be sacrosanct, which was Israel, now possibly facing sanctions for the treatment and the unfortunate overexpansion of buildings and apartment complexes in the West Bank, which, I mean, if you really think about it, seems pretty trivial compared to things that, the U.S. president should have to worry about. When you have the president of the United States dealing with Netanyahu, who's the prime minister, okay, the head of the country of Israel, and they're worried about where people are building apartment buildings. I mean, that is so foreign and surreal to me that is such a big deal that it garners the president of the United States attention, that it garners any world leader's attention, that we have to worry about where Israel is letting people build their apartment complexes. And I could go on. I mean, I'm not a friend of Israel, and I see this role and how it's changed over, I think, the last 10 years especially, and the different factions and power players that have shaped and transitioned, I think, away from maybe the old school neocon model to the new school neocon model, which is failing quite miserably. And that's one of the reasons that you have now Switzerland, several other countries. Let's see. We have, Switzerland, which, I mean, think about how much Chinese money they could launder. There's a lot of money there. The AIIB, the Asian Development Bank, is going to be working now with the World Bank and working with the IMF. And the U.S.'s reaction to the IMF is pretty telling in and of itself. Let's see. We got Jeff in Chelsea, Mass. on the line here. Well, we'll go to him in just a moment. But continuing with the thought, and you could be part of the show too. I might as well just plug that phone number. Last week it was Kevin in Iowa that called into the show, and it was actually the first time. One of the reasons that we started doing this on a radio syndicate was to take phone calls and do a live call-in show. 800-313-9443 is the number to call into the broadcast, and we'll take calls in the next segment. So just hang on there, Jeff. And back to Lagarde, the IMF, the World Bank, and this new Chinese Development Bank. This is just a sign of the role that the IMF is going to be put into to maximize the power and influence that the U.S. dollar still has in these markets. So it's not to say that the U.S. is being ostracized from this. If nothing else, I think that the IMF and other Western powers will probably be invited to the party, at least for the meantime. The Russians have not been pushed out of the SWIFT system, nor do the powers that be plan to push them out of the international monetary system altogether, which would be, it would be a huge deal. I mean, the Cold War would pale in comparison to this. And I think that the U.S., the neocons, the people in John Kerry's ear, the Victoria Nulands, the Kagans, would love to be able to have a unified Europe push forward to make these sanctions stick. But they're not. They are not, because they do not believe in the mission. So one of the problems with never-ending perpetual war, with U.S. Integration into this NATO force and using it for the domination of the Middle East over the last 20 years, has debilitated our credit, and the whole notion that there's some kind of moral hazard that we're avoiding. And you can see that with Crimea. So we have 1 year into the two forms of revolution that happen nowadays. And that is, well, you have a Western-funded, NATO-funded group of neo-Nazis that overthrow an elected leader. Not to say that he's not a criminal, but who isn't when it comes to politics? I get that all the time. Well, Putin's a criminal. Well, okay. He might be, but do you think that Teresa Heinz Kerry is any different? Have you looked into the Bush family secrets? Have you looked into the Clinton World global initiative? I mean, par for the course, and we can debate which one of these guys. I mean, it's not that there's a good guy and a bad guy. That's what the U.S. has been able to do for a long time, is to keep people in this two-party or this duopoly mentality, that what we're doing is morally correct and it's good, and that what somebody else is doing is bad, and that we're doing the right thing, that we're the good guys. I know that sounds like an oversimplification, but it really does work, and it really has, up to this point, I think within the last few years at least, done very well for the U.S. Well, what we're doing is good. Margaret Thatcher said, actually, no, it was Madeleine Albright. Thinking about her because of her protege and all of the pedophile scandal revelations that are coming out. But she said that 500,000 dead Iraqi children was worth the price of bringing the coalition to bringing this new U.S. Western-supported dictatorship, the military junta, military government, whatever we have there in Iraq. It was well worth the 500,000 dead Iraqi children. That number is doubled. And when you think about that, it's just this stunning example of what people view success as, and what people in the neocon mindset believe are okay. It's okay for 500,000 children to die, and, it's just the price you pay. And we're seeing the fruits of this in Libya, because we've let the same people, the Kagans, the Noodlemans, continue to dominate the foreign policy. If you look at Jeb Bush, I mean, he's brought back Keith Weissman. He's brought back Bolton. I mean, you just go through the list of neoconservatives that orchestrated the war in Iraq in 2003. I mean, you might as well have Paul Bremer there. I mean, it's just ridiculous, the low caliber, stupid people that have dominated the last 15 years of political and geopolitical U.S. strategy. I mean, just really, really stupid people. And I know that some people think, well, this is a much bigger plot. I really think that they believed that doing this would empower Israel, that this would help solidify and Americanize and make money for oil companies. But I can't imagine, even at this point, even with no-bid contracts, that there is that much profit that makes any of what has happened even worth it in their own eyes. Now it's just about being right. Now it's just about trying to mend something, make something out of what has happened there. And the revisionist history, the new CIA document that has been released about why the U.S. invaded Iraq, it's worth your read. It's what you're going to have to counter if you talk to people that read the New York Times. But it is nothing short of ridiculous. And, we'll continue with that. Take your phone calls. We got Jeff on the line, and we'll hear from you as well. If you'd like to call in, you can do that. More coming your way. It's Blacklisted Radio. All right, welcome back. It's Blacklisted Radio right here on RBN. So, let's see. Turn that off. There we go. Better. All right, so we were talking with Jeff in Chelsea, Mass., who may feel like some of you out there, you're just waiting for the next event that will kick off martial law. And Not to demean that idea, it could happen. I don't think that the U.S. government would have a chance at keeping mobs of Americans at bay if they were so inclined. They just probably couldn't, in my mind. Not to say that where you're at, where you may be, would not become part of some kind of situation that would cause a state of emergency. A lot of people are worried about that because of the rising rates of water levels, global warming, creating ISIS terrorism. Jeff noted Muslim populations of people ready to pounce and blow the place to pieces, and government ready to put people in internment camps. I think that's kind of an outdated analogy when you look at how sophisticated and on demand and just some of the tactics that are used today. I mean, FEMA camps are real things. Look at Hurricane Andrew. Look at the Superstorm Sandy. I mean, they have those, FEMA camps. Literally, people are there. They're disarmed. They have to tag their firearms with RFID tracking bracelets. I mean, it's not some new thing that's happening anymore. These are realities. So I don't know if you can escape it or really worry about it too much because the thing that I want to stress is that the government uses this fear of terror and fear of some kind of attack as a way to control and to manipulate people. I think there's a lot of other people that would like to see a make or break situation and believe that, kind of romanticize that as being some kind of faux revolution. Well, just watch out, because if you're one of those people that is optimistic about that, I would point towards Ukraine and look at how some of the blood has been drenched on the streets of Kiev in that light. So things don't always turn out the best, and people, even though they have great intentions and want accountability and they want a revolution, what they get may be far from that. But nonetheless, I think it's a mentality that a lot of people have, is that the only thing to do, it's just to run to the woods and live with your friends that you have today. And I think that's just sad. Yeah, it's like a lot of situations where and I talked about this in a podcast a few weeks ago, and I want to plug my latest that I did this week exclusively at blacklistedradioCom. The old gods are dead, long live the iGods, where I talk about this ascendance into technology and what that means and where we find ourselves today. Because just like many of you out there, I will never accept or embrace any of those notions, any of those ideas, and I'm always going to value privacy and value individual liberty over the collective good, over the hive mind. But the question is, will your grandchildren? And the sad reality is that I know people, you do too, that are just waiting to get off of planet Earth. They're like, I don't want to live in the Minority Report. I'd rather be dead. And if you feel that way, you're not alone. You're not one of the many, or one of the few. Rather, you are one of the many that looks at what we are creating today and says, "Hey, man, I don't like that." And you are of, are of like mind. So don't live in perpetual fear of something that may happen, because statistically, the chances of you being killed in this country by another human being is way, way less than it was 100 years ago. Statistically, you being killed by a police officer is 8 times, and I saw a new number that said 64 times. Let's just go with 8. You're 8 times more likely to be killed by a cop than you are a terrorist. And we need to put things in perspective. I guess that's my grander point here. All right, let's go to Michigan and talk to Bob. What's up, Bob?
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. How are you?
Oh, not too bad.
Good.
My amused at the perspective some of your folks have about raising cattle. That you think you can just sit back and this whole life is going to happen to you. Well, I'm 63 years old and I'm still learning.
Oh, well, no, I know about cattle. I've lived in Texas my whole life. It's just being able to get away and have something that you're putting back into the land and being able to build something for your family. So that was what I was really lamenting. That would be so refreshing. Not that it's just an easy day. Yeah.
It's hard work.
Very.
And I'm not sure that a lot of these city folks understand that yet.
Well, it's going to be great money for you in the very near future. Beef's becoming so expensive. I can imagine that you're going to benefit.
The payoff is very good, but it's very hard work. And
do you believe that it's well worth it? I mean, obviously you do because it's your choice of profession.
Yeah, I haven't done it all my life, but I did it as a kid, and then I came back since I was about 55. And yeah, it's hard work, but you got to understand that going in. There's no cakewalk to being a farmer.
No. My father-in-law does small ranching, under 100 head for a family that co-owns a ranch, and he's always out there working, and it's that's what a lot of people don't realize. It's a 7-day gig. You don't get vacations. You don't get to take holidays off. You're not getting a Martin Luther King Day off. You've still got to be out there, and if you're not out there, somebody else has to be, and that's one of the things that's kind of
correct, Amundo. I'm glad you understand that.
Sure, yeah. So I wasn't trying to diminish it. I only covet what you're able to do, and hope one day that I will be able to do that as well.
Today on my day off, I fine-tuned my leaf blower so I could blow frozen cat turds into the woods.
Wow. Well, it sounds like you had a pretty amusing day. I don't know. That one might take the cake, Bob.
Have a good evening.
All right, you as well. See, it's like the guy that I see these cars for people that drive around and they're the pooper scoopers, and there's rich people that don't want to pick up the poop in the backyard, and you just get that wow, this is real. This is a real job, and you just see that person, and they don't want to make eye contact with you. If you live in the big city like I live in, where there's tons of McMansions, there's people that don't want to pick up their poop. There's a need and a service, and that's the other thing. You can't be above some pretty gross stuff. You have to deal with some pretty wild stuff on the farm. On the farm, this is my friend who owns or co-owns a farm. It's kind of a co-op. Said every day on the farm it's sex and violence, and it's so true. Every day, sex, violence, and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and debt sometimes. All right, I don't know how much time we have before the break, but we're probably up against it. Let's go to Sovereign Man, who's on line 2. Sovereign Man, what's up?
The price of every damn thing.
That's true. It's true.
Even the oil is going up.
Just a little bit. And even when it goes down to $40 a barrel, I don't see that $1.50 price tag anymore.
Yeah, it should be at $1.99, no higher. Around there. That the American people can bear that.
Agreed.
I apologize for my voice. I'm a victim of chemtrails today.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. We're not, waiting for martial law. We actually, I guess we are waiting for martial law. We are currently under martial rule. Hence, we have the 10 FEMA regions. We have the militarization of the police and the intercontinental standing army of, our domestic law armies, I guess you want to call it, because, they're all over the world, but they're here too.
Right. Yeah, you got the feds, you got these multi-jurisdictional task forces where multiple counties, states, you got the National Guard. You have an apparatus, an interwoven apparatus that's, that is militarized, and at the top of it, it's the Department of Justice.
Also, AKA Homeland Stupidity. They can't organize enough to actually, grab both hands to grab, what.
Yeah, it's a good thing that they're constantly worried about keeping us in fear so that they keep themselves in jobs. It might work out to our advantage.
Steroids,
Yeah.
GMOs, running around like the cattle that they look like. Hey, don't get me wrong. I do need some semblance of order, but it's getting ridiculous.
Yes.
Yeah, and about the cattle. The organics. If we don't stop the chemtrails, we're done. We don't have the technology to track these planes. And I was thinking, maybe we could apprehend and arrest and try these pilots and these individuals that are putting these chemicals in these planes. We got to do something. It's getting bad.
Yeah, I don't believe that every plane or contrail out there is a chemtrail. And when you look at the mounting evidence that the U.S. government and other governments around the world do aerosolize all sorts of things to spray them, to get rid of them. There's one proponent that came out recently that said that we should spray radiation on all of the people of America because it's fine and in low doses, blah blah blah. But
actually, it's vaccination without consent. We're being poisoned without our consent, and it's criminal. I don't care what their statutes, ordinances, or acts or whatever. It's criminal.
Right. Yeah, legally, I don't know. Can the pharmaceutical industrial complex test drugs on the American people unknowingly? Is that still illegal? It should be. I think I agree with you. It should be illegal. And when they have gotten busted in the past for it, they have deemed it illegal and paid reparations to victims. Most recently. If people out there thinking this is some crazy conspiracy theory, just has to look back to what they were doing in the projects back in the late 50s, early 60s in St. Louis. They were spraying radioactive cadmium onto tenants that were living there, primarily black, poor people, and the U.S. military conducted massive amounts of experimentation on people, but I don't think that there's just a blanket spraying and poisoning intentionally of every person across the U.S. either. I do believe that they are spraying lots of stuff that's pretty bad.
Doug, listen, I look up. I live in a city. Okay, I look up in the sky. Hardly a day goes by that there isn't a plasma in the sky. It's like 1 minute the sky is clear. And the next minute, you see the fleet flying.
So, I guess the only other argument people would have against that when they look up is that these are just from additives in plane fuel, or these are, climatic or, climate conditions, humidity. Because that's what I get when I say, hey, man, look at that one. Especially when they're like in grids and, there's a lot of uniformity. You think, okay, well, this is probably part of a cloud seeding project. But it's so hard to find out exactly. This is the thing. It's unregulated. So you have private companies. You might have the U.S. military. You might have all of these other groups that are testing, that are using different licenses to spray, chemicals into the atmosphere. Which ones they are, who's spraying it, what's being sprayed. It begs all of these questions. And I think that's the problem, is that there's just not enough transparency and even regulation over that. Laws that I think that we should have, and that's something that I think Mike Murphy, a lot of those people that have really focused their their attention towards, chemtrails should really look at, trying to pass legislation that bans and prohibits and makes illegal the unauthorized aerosolized, spraying of any chemical. The apple moths in California, the spraying of an untested herbicide on people, where tens of thousands of people actually reported, or thousands rather, I don't want to embellish, reported sinus issues and other, health-related side effects from this. So it's, I just want to clarify that, when people look up in the sky, what are you looking at? Are you looking at a plane? And if today, I would imagine if you did have some kind of campaign, most of that would be drone piloted.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. You're not going to be able to grab the pilots because they're going to be, fly by wire. So if you are growing a garden and you really want to have quality of food, get a greenhouse.
Yeah.
Filter the air.
Not only that, you're going to have to probably filter the water, too.
No doubt. Filter the water, treat the water. There's a lot of things you can do with the water.
Yeah.
To actually quantify your production.
Sure. Oh yeah, you have to. I mean, even if you're using regular water, I mean, it has so much chlorine. I mean, people talk about the sodium fluoride, which is horrible, and it is, at least people are becoming aware that this is a neurotoxin. It's an excitotoxin. It's something that you don't want to drink massive amounts of. But when you look at that, it might even pale in comparison to the amount of chlorine that they put in the water to kill everything, which is great at killing.
The chloramines are really bad.
Ugh.
There's a guy on RBN. His name is Win Parker. He speaks profoundly on it.
What? He likes it, or on the fact that?
No.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah.
He's on that. That's his primary subject.
Cool. Okay, thanks, Sovereign Man. Appreciate the phone call and the point on chemtrails. We'll continue the conversation. Final segment coming your way. On the other side is Blacklisted Radio. All right, welcome back. It's Blacklisted Radio. It's the final segment. A few more things I wanted to highlight here. It's great to hear from old friends, and saw that one of the callers there was actually a guy I've talked to for years in the chat room. You can make your way there and interact with people as well as live listeners, and get yourself subscribed to our newsletter. You can also get exclusive content that is not published anywhere else, commercial free, there at blacklistedradio.com, like our latest show, which is The Old Gods Are Dead, Long Live the I Gods. Not that it's a promotion, not that that's a good thing, just it's a transformation, and it's something that we're seeing happening across the board. And I think that there's a huge amount of resistance to it. I mean, here's one example. TSA now to spot terrorists by scanning facial expressions. You remember the behavioral detection officers, the people that were there getting you ready to get onto a safe flight to whatever your destination may be. But if you're frowning, if you look sad, if you look terrorist-ish, they are going to talk to you. Well, anyway, they're going ahead with it. And the funny thing is that they've morphed this, not just the fact that they wanted to keep it secret for obvious reasons, and that is that they have sent TSA agents, basically people right out of high school, to a 3-hour course on identifying terrorists, and they send them to chastise and give crap to people in the airports, all in the name of doing something. And because there's a lack of terrorists, a lack of real terrorists out there that are trying to kill Jeff and Chelsea Mass, although they might try. He like Putin has the judo, he has the mojo, so he doesn't have to worry. But some people that don't feel quite as brave, like most of you listening, have to contend with that. Anyway, the biometric dragnet that they've created instead, it seems like, well, okay, this is better because it's not just some zit-faced TSA agent. It's now this computer that is saying that I'm frowning incorrectly, and where is the accountability? Okay, when you get pulled to the side and you get delayed and thrown off your flight and you have to pay $200 more to American Airlines and blah, blah, blah. Who pays for this? Who is going to suffer besides the consumer, the average American citizen? Yes, that's where the buck stops. So, I've had to do some traveling this year. I have to do some in the coming months, and it's going to be hard to not look depressed like a terrorist. It's going to be hard to maintain my composure there, but it just it smacks of idiocy. But people would rather, and there was a recent survey, people would rather listen to some kind of robot or to a computer rather than to a boss. And so I guess it makes some sense, because it feels equitable. They feel like they might be doing a better job. What does that say about humanity? It's a grand question. We'll continue to ask that, and we will have to adjourn. Until next week, my friends, take care. Good talking with you, and stay tuned to blacklistedradio.com during the week for updates and much more.